Good evening, guys. Welcome to dinner. We're on 1 Samuel chapter 5. And the Philistines took the ark of Elohim and brought it from Eben Haezer to Ashdod. And the Philistines took the ark of Elohim and brought it into the house of Dagon and set it by Dagon. And the Ashdodites rose early in the morning and saw Dagon fallen on its face to the ground before the ark of Jehovah. So they took Dagon and put it in its place again. And they arose early the next morning and saw Dagon fallen on its face to the ground before the ark of Jehovah, and the head of Dagon and both the palms of its hands cut off, and the threshold only Dagon itself was left of it. That is why to this day the priest of Dagon and all who come into Dagon's house do not tread on the threshold of Dagon in Ashdod. But the hand of Jehovah was heavy on the Ashdodites, and he wasted them and struck them with tumors, Ashdod and its borders. And when the men of Ashdod saw this, they said, "Let not the ark of Elohim of Israel remain with us, for his hand has been hard on us, and on Dagon our mighty one." Then they sent and gathered to them all the princes of the Philistines and said, "What do we do with the ark of the Elohim of Israel?" And they answered, "Let the ark of the Elohim of Israel be removed to Gath." And they removed the ark of the Elohim of Israel. And it came to be, after they removed it, that the hand of Jehovah was against the city with a very great destruction. And he struck the men of this city, from the least to the greatest, with tumors broke out on them. They then sent the ark of Elohim to Ekron. And it came to be, as the ark of Elohim came to Ekron, that the Ekronites cried out, saying, "They have removed the ark of the Elohim of Israel to us, to kill us and our people." And they sent and gathered together all the princes of the Philistines and said, "Send away the ark of the Elohim of Israel, and let it return to its own people, or its own place, so that it does not kill us and our people." For there had come a deadly destruction throughout all the city. The hand of Elohim was very heavy there, and the men who did not die were stricken with tumors, and the cry of the city went up to the heavens. And the ark of Jehovah was in the field of the Philistines for 7 new moons. And the Philistines called for the priest and the diviner, saying, "What do we do with the ark of Jehovah? Let us know with what we should send to its place." And they said, "If you send away the ark of the Elohim of Israel, do not send it empty, but you shall certainly return it to him with a guilt offering. Then you are going to be healed, and it shall be known to you why his hand does not turn aside from you." And they said, "What is the guilt offering which we return to him?" And they answered, "The number of the princes of the Philistines, 5 golden tumors and 5 golden rats. For the same plague was on all of you and on your princes. And you shall make images of your tumors and images of your rats that ruin the land, and you shall give esteem to the Elohim of Israel. It could be that he does lift his hand from you, from your mighty one, and from your land. And why do you harden your hearts as the Mithrites and Pharaoh hardened their hearts, when he had severely dealt with them? Did they not send them away, and they went? And now take and make a new wagon, and 2 milk cows, which have never been yoked, and hitch the cows to the wagon, and take their calves home away from them. And take the ark of Jehovah, and put it on the wagon, and put the objects of gold which you are returning to him as a guilt offering in a chest by its side, and send it away, and it shall go. And you shall see if it goes up the way to its own border, to Beth Shemesh. Then he has done us this great evil. But if not, then we shall know that his hand has not come against us. An accident it was to us." And the man did so, and took 2 milk cows and hitched them to the wagon and shut up their calves at home. And they put the ark of Jehovah on the wagon and the chest with the gold rats and the images of their tumors. And the cows went straight for the way to Beth Shemesh and went along the highway, bellowing as they went, and did not turn aside right or left. And the princes of the Philistines went after them to the border of Beth Shemesh. And they of Beth Shemesh were reaping their wheat harvest in the valley. And they lifted their eyes and saw the ark and rejoiced to see it. And the wagon came into the field of Yehoshua of Beth Shemesh, and stood there, and there was a great stone. So they split the wood of the wagon, and offered the cows as an ascending offering to Jehovah. And the Levites took down the ark of Jehovah, and the chest that was with it, in which were the objects of gold, and put them on the great stone. And the men of Beth Shemesh offered ascending offerings and slaughtered slaughterings the same day to Jehovah. And when the 5 princes of the Philistines saw it, they returned to Ekron the same day. And these are the gold tumors which the Philistines returned as a guilt offering to Jehovah, 1 for Ashdod, 1 for Azah, 1 for Ashkelon, 1 for Gath, 1 for Ekron, and the gold rats by the number of all the cities of the Philistines, belonging to the 5 princes, both walled cities and country villages, even as far as the great meadow, on which they placed the ark of Jehovah, remain to this day in the field of Yehoshua of Beth Shemesh. And he struck among the men of Beth Shemesh, for they had looked into the ark of Jehovah. He struck among the people 70 men, and the people mourned, because Jehovah struck among the people a great smiting. And the men of Beth Shemesh said, "Who is able to stand before this set-apart Jehovah Elohim? And to whom shall he go from us?" And they sent messengers to the inhabitants of Kiriath Yearim, saying, "The Philistines have brought back the ark of Jehovah. Come down, take it up to you." And the men of Kiriath Yearim came and took the ark of Jehovah, and brought it into the house of Abinadab on the hill, and set apart Eleazar his son to guard the ark of Jehovah. And it came to be, from the day that the ark remained in Kiriath Yearim, that the time increased. It came to be 20 years, and all the house of Israel lamented after Jehovah. And Shemuel spoke to all the house of Israel, saying, "If you return to Jehovah with all your hearts, then put away the foreign mighty ones and Ashtaroth from among you, and prepare your hearts for Jehovah, and serve him only, so that he delivers you from the hand of the Philistines." And the children of Israel put away the Baals and Ashtaroth, and served Jehovah only. And Shemuel said, "Gather all Israel to Mitzpah, and let me pray to Jehovah for you." And they gathered to Mitzpah, and drew water, and poured it out before Jehovah. And they fasted that day, and said, "We have sinned against Jehovah." And Shemuel rightly ruled the children of Israel at Mitzpah. And when the Philistines heard that the children of Israel had gathered together at Mitzpah, the princes of the Philistines went up against Israel, and the children of Israel heard of it, and were afraid of the Philistines. And the children of Israel said to Shemuel, "Do not cease to cry out to Jehovah, our Elohim, for us, that he would save us from the hand of the Philistines." And Shemuel took a suckling lamb, and offered it as an ascending offering completely to Jehovah. And Shemuel cried out to Jehovah for Israel, and Jehovah answered him. And it came to be, as Shemuel offered up the ascending offering, the Philistines drew near to battle against Israel. But Jehovah thundered with a great noise on that day on the Philistines, and troubled them, and they were smitten before Israel. And the men of Israel went out from Mizpah and pursued the Philistines and struck them as far below as Beth-kar. And Shemuel took a stone and set it up between Mizpah and Shen, and called its name Eben-ha-ezer, saying, Thus far Jehovah has helped us. Thus the Philistines were humbled and no longer came into the border of Israel. And the hand of Jehovah was against the Philistines all the days of Shemuel, and the cities which the Philistines had taken from Israel were returned to Israel from Ekron to Gath. And Israel recovered its borders from the hands of the Philistines, and there was peace between Israel and the Amorites. And Shemuel rightly ruled Israel all the days of his life. And each year he made the rounds of Bethel and Gilgal and Mizpah, and rightly ruled Israel in all those places. Then he returned to Ramah, for his home was there, and there he rightly ruled Israel, and there he built a slaughter place to Jehovah. And it came to be, when Shemuel was old, that he made his sons rulers over Israel, and the name of his firstborn was Yoel, and the name of his second, Abiah, rulers in Beth Ersheba. But his sons did not walk in his ways, and turned aside after own gain, and took bribes and twisted right ruling. And all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Shemuel at Ramah, and said to him, Look, you are old, and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now appoint for us a sovereign to rule us like all the nations. But the word was evil in the eyes of Shemuel, when they said, Give us a sovereign to rule us. So Shemuel prayed to Jehovah. And Jehovah said to Shemuel, Listen to the voice of the people in all that they say to you. For they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me from reigning over them. According to all the works which they have done since the day that I brought them up out of Mizraim, even to this day, forsaking me and serving other mighty ones, so they are doing to you too. And now listen to their voice, but you shall certainly warn them, and shall make known to them the ruling of the sovereign who does reign over them. And Shemuel spoke all the words of Jehovah to the people who asked him for a sovereign, and said, This is the ruling of the sovereign who does reign over you. He shall take your sons and appoint them for his own chariots, and to be his horsemen, and they shall run before his chariots, and appoint commanders over his thousands, and commanders over his 50s, or to plow his ground and reap his harvest, or to make his weapons and equipment for his chariots. And your daughters he is going to take to be perfumers and cooks and bakers, and the best of your fields and your vineyards and your olive trees he is going to take and give them to his servants. And 1/10 of your grain and your vintage he is going to take and give it to his officers and servants, and your male servants and your female servants, and your best young men and your donkeys he is going to take and use for his own work. 1/10 of your sheep he is going to take, and you are to be his servants. You shall cry out in that day because of your sovereign whom you have chosen for yourselves, but Jehovah is not going to answer you in that day. However, the people refused to listen to the voice of Shemuel and said, No, but let a sovereign be over us. Then we shall be, we also, like all the nations, and our sovereign shall rule us and go out before us and fight our battles. And Shemuel heard all the words of the people, and he repeated them in the hearing of Jehovah. And Jehovah said to Shemuel, Listen to their voice and make them a sovereign. And Shemuel said to the men of Israel, Each of you go into his city.